"You're worthless, Dad. Why even bother showing up?" Those words hit me like a hammer at the dinner table, spoken by my own son, Tyler, while his fiancée, Lisa, smirked across the room. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth, the smell of roast beef and mashed potatoes suddenly acrid in my nose. Before I continue, if you're new here, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. My name is Robert Bob Thompson, and I've lived my entire life in Springfield, Ohio. I'm a construction contractor, a man who built his career brick by brick, literally. I poured my sweat into every project, every loan payment, and every late-night call to ensure my family had a roof over their heads, a car in the driveway, and college tuition in the bank. Yet here I was, at 49, being dismissed at the dinner table by the very people I'd sacrificed everything for. It wasn't the first time Tyler had said something cruel, but this time, it was final. He had the audacity to insult me in front of his friends, my own children laughing quietly in the corners. I leaned back in my chair, swallowing the lump in my throat. My wife, Margaret, had passed 2 years ago. She would have defended me, or at least tried to mediate. But I was alone now. That night, I walked through the empty rooms of my house, the ticking of the old wall clock the only sound. The house smelled faintly of lavender, Margaret's favorite scent, still lingering like a memory I couldn't shake. I thought about the times I missed birthdays, soccer games, and school recitals. I thought about the overtime shifts, the weekends, spent drafting blueprints and negotiating contracts while my children grew distant. And now, this mockery. Tyler thought he could reduce me to nothing. He didn't realize I still had control over the life I'd built. I drove to my office early the next morning, the streets of Springfield quiet under the gray Ohio sky. The scent of wet asphalt from an overnight drizzle clung to the air. I flipped through the ledgers, invoices, and account statements. My construction company, Thompson Builders, wasn't just stable. It was thriving. That's when it hit me. Tyler thought I was worthless, but he had no idea that everything I'd worked for, my savings, investments, property, and business, was still entirely under my control. And if he wanted to push me out of his life, well, I could push back in ways he would never see coming. I remembered the mortgage documents for the house Tyler and his fiancée lived in, the accounts I had co-signed for their business ventures, and the stocks I had invested in their names. Every penny they assumed they owned, every asset they laughed at me over, was mine. And suddenly, I knew exactly what I had to do. But first, I had to be patient. I couldn't just confront them. Not yet. Tyler's ego was massive, and Lisa was cunning. They needed to believe they had the upper hand. The longer I let them flaunt it, the deeper the trap would be. I closed the office door, the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead filling the room. My mind began mapping out the steps, the legal angles, the financial strategies. Banks, lawyers, property deeds, investments, every system I had mastered over decades would work for me now. And when the moment came, Tyler and Lisa would realize something they hadn't counted on. A father who had been patient, quiet, and underestimated was about to take everything back. That night, I sat on the porch, a bourbon in hand, listening to the faint hum of the spring river in the distance. My children's betrayal stung like fire, but anger wasn't clouding my vision anymore. It was focus, cold, precise, unstoppable focus. Because the truth was simple. Tyler might think I was worthless, but my bank account, my deeds, and my legacy would prove otherwise, and he had no idea what was coming. By the following weekend, the tension in the Thompson household had reached a boiling point. Tyler and Lisa weren't just mocking me privately anymore. They had taken to flaunting their independence in front of friends, neighbors, and anyone who would listen. I remember walking past the house while checking on some construction work in the neighborhood. Through the open blinds, I saw Tyler leaning back on the couch with a smirk, holding a glass of whiskey, while Lisa laughed like she owned the world. "I told Dad he doesn't understand business," Tyler said, loud, enough for me to hear even outside. "He's just a relic from the past. All he knows is manual labor and pennies." Lisa chimed in, her voice dripping with condescension. "Exactly. If he were smart, he'd stay out of our lives and let us manage things. He's done enough damage already." Damage? My chest tightened. Every dollar I'd invested, every mortgage I'd co-signed, every sleepless night I'd endured to give them opportunities, they called that damage? Later that evening, I went to the Rusty Barrel Diner, a small spot on Main Street I'd frequented since the early 90s. The smell of bacon, coffee, and frying onions filled the air. Locals exchanged glances as I walked in, murmuring under their breath. "You're the dad from the Thompson family, right?" said one of the regulars, a man named Jimmy who had grown up working construction alongside me. "I am," I replied, calmly, sliding into a booth. Jimmy leaned in. "Heard about the dinner last week. That boy has some nerve, treating you like that in front of everyone." I nodded slowly. "He thinks I'm powerless. But they're forgetting one thing. The foundation I built didn't crumble because they insulted me." Even as I spoke, I felt the cold fury simmer beneath my skin. Tyler and Lisa weren't just arrogant, they were reckless. And every reckless move would only make their downfall easier. 2 days later, I received an unexpected invitation from Tyler. It was for a small celebration dinner at their place, boasting that they had finally made it financially. I stared at the invitation, my mind calculating every risk, every opportunity. At the dinner, they went out of their way to humiliate me. "Dad, it's cute that you still try to understand modern business," Lisa said, swirling a glass of wine. "But some of us have moved past the old ways. Maybe it's time you accepted that." Tyler grinned, leaning back. "Yeah, I mean, you did your part, right? You paid for college, helped with the house. Now it's our turn to run things. You're just obsolete," I continued, calm and unwavering. "You thought I was worthless, that I didn't matter. But the foundation of your wealth, your home, your so-called independence, you forgot one thing. I built it, and I can take it back." Tyler's face went red with rage. He lunged forward, pointing at me. "You'll pay for this. You think you can humiliate me in front of everyone?" I leaned in, voice low and steady. "No, Tyler. You've humiliated yourself, and now everyone knows it." The neighbors whispered, some nodding, others shaking their heads. The truth had spilled out in full view. Tyler and Lisa's arrogance and negligence were exposed, and there was nothing they could do. The eviction notices were posted the following week. Every asset I controlled legally reverted to my authority. Tyler and Lisa packed their belongings, moving out in silence, their smugness replaced by fear and shame. By the time the neighborhood settled into quiet again, I stood on my porch, looking at the house I had built, the house they had mocked, and the legacy I had preserved. For the first time in months, the cicadas hummed peacefully. The air smelled of cedar and fresh paint, and the world felt right again. I poured myself a bourbon. That evening, the warm liquid steadying my nerves. I picked up the photo of Margaret from the mantel and whispered, "You were right, love. Patience, planning, and integrity. That's what wins. I hadn't just regained control of my property. I had reclaimed my dignity, my pride, and my peace. And Tyler and Lisa, they had learned the hard way that arrogance, neglect, and betrayal always have consequences. By the following Monday, the legal papers were finalized. Every asset that Tyler and Lisa had thought was theirs, including the house, the bank accounts, and the investments, was once again fully under my control. I walked through the front door of the house, the familiar scent of cedar and polished wood filling my senses. Neighbors passed by, some offering quiet congratulations, others whispering with admiration. Even old Mrs. Hendricks across the street gave me a small nod and said, "Well done, Bob. That's poetic justice for you." I smiled, but the moment wasn't about vindication. It was about peace. The humiliation I had endured, the mockery. At the dinner table, the whispers, the arrogance of my own children had finally been balanced. Tyler and Lisa left town shortly after, taking only what they could carry. Their plans, their pride, their assumptions of control, all evaporated in the wake of the legal truth. They had underestimated me, and now they were left with nothing but regret. Rachel visited a few days later. Her expression was subdued, her voice soft. "Dad, I didn't understand before. I thought you'd lost everything." I shook my head gently. "I didn't lose, Rachel. You just weren't ready to see the truth. But it's all right. Some lessons need to be learned the hard way." She looked at me, eyes filled with remorse. I reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You can make amends, but remember, respect and trust have to be earned." That evening, I sat on the porch with a glass of bourbon, the Ohio sun dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and purple. I breathed in the cool autumn air, letting the quiet settle in. For the first time in years, I felt it. True peace. Not because I had taken back what was mine, but because I had restored balance, justice, and dignity. Tyler and Lisa had lost everything they thought they controlled. I had regained everything that mattered: the home, the respect of the community, and most importantly, my self-respect. I poured one last sip of bourbon, lifting the glass to the fading light. "This," I whispered, "is what comes of patience, persistence, and knowing your worth." The cicadas hummed softly in the distance, the river shimmered in the twilight, and for the first time I truly felt at home. Because in the end, the children who called me worthless learned that a father's worth is measured not by obedience, but by integrity, perseverance, and the power to reclaim what is rightfully his. Tell us your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories. I smiled politely, keeping my composure. Every insult, every laugh, was a thread in the web I was weaving. "You know," I said, calm as ever, "sometimes the things we call obsolete are the very things that hold everything together. You might want to remember that." They blinked at me, confused. Tyler's smirk wavered for a moment before returning. Lisa raised an eyebrow, clearly sensing a challenge she didn't understand. That night, as I drove home, the lights of Springfield blurring past, I realized the trap was ready. They thought they were untouchable, that their wealth and arrogance shielded them. But I had one advantage they could never anticipate: patience, knowledge, and legal control. The next morning, I started reviewing my investments, the mortgage papers, and bank statements connected to Tyler and Lisa's independence. Every account, every deed, every contract, They were under my name. Every piece of paper was a tool, and soon I'd use them all. I began to map out my strategy, step by step. Wait for the right moment, expose their negligence, reclaim control, and make sure the whole town saw exactly who was really in charge. Because while they laughed, flaunted, and insulted, I realized something crucial. They were walking into a storm they couldn't survive. And I was the storm. That Monday morning, I drove to Springfield Title and Trust, the small office where I'd handled most of my real estate dealings over the years. The familiar scent of old leather and ink greeted me as I walked in. Mr. Henderson, the title attorney who had known me since my early contracting days, looked up from his desk. "Bob, you look like a man who's got a plan," he said, adjusting his glasses. I set the folders down and met his gaze. "I do. Tyler and Lisa think they've outsmarted me. They've been flaunting my money, laughing at my legacy, but they've forgotten who owns the foundation their lives are built on." Mr. Henderson nodded knowingly. "Let's see what we can do legally." For hours, we went through every document: property deeds, mortgage agreements, investment accounts, and bank statements. Every joint account, every property that I'd co-signed for Tyler and Lisa, every investment I had funded, they all had clauses and loopholes I could leverage. "Look at this," Mr. Henderson said, tapping a paper. "They've neglected to pay taxes on the house. Combined with the fact that the deed never changed hands legally, you could reclaim full ownership. And if they try to fight it, well, the law is on your side." A slow smile crept across my face. Patience, precision, and planning. This was going to be clean. Next, I visited the First National Bank of Springfield, the branch I'd trusted for decades. I explained the situation to my account manager, showing them Tyler and Lisa's accounts, that I had co-signed. "Once you revoke their access," the manager said, "they'll have zero control. It's all under your authority legally. You just need to follow the proper notices." That night, as I sat on my porch with a glass of bourbon, the Ohio air crisp around me, I felt a cold satisfaction. My children's arrogance and insults had created the perfect opening. Every paper, every clause, every unpaid tax, they were building a trap for themselves. I started planting subtle seeds of doubt in the community. Over coffee at the Rusty Barrel Diner, I mentioned casually to a few neighbors that Tyler's business dealings were a bit reckless and that they should keep an eye on his property taxes. The whispers spread quickly. Small towns like Springfield thrive on gossip, and soon even the local post office was buzzing about Tyler and Lisa's supposed financial negligence. Meanwhile, Tyler and Lisa continued flaunting their success, oblivious to the storm I was quietly assembling. One evening, Rachel, my daughter, stopped by unannounced. Her face was tense, anxious. "Dad, Tyler. He says you've been checking his accounts, talking to the bank, the neighbors. I don't understand. Why are you doing this?" I looked at her calmly. "Rachel, you saw what happened at the dinner table. You saw how they treated me. Every word, every insult. They're not just careless. They're reckless. I'm just making sure they don't walk over me again." Her eyes welled up, but she didn't argue. She had no idea just how far I dug into the system. I just thought, maybe we could fix things," she said softly. "Some things can't be fixed, Rachel," I replied, "but they can be corrected." Over the next week, the plan solidified. I would quietly reclaim control of every asset that belonged to me. Tyler and Lisa would think they were untouchable until the day everything collapsed around them. Every mortgage, every bank account, every property, each one was a thread, and I was about to pull them all at once, because while they laughed and mocked me, they forgot one thing. I was patient, methodical, and I knew every loophole they had ignored. And when the time came, they wouldn't see it coming. It all came to a head on a Saturday afternoon. Tyler and Lisa had invited half the neighborhood to their backyard for a celebration, boasting about their recent investments and claiming to have everything under control. I arrived unannounced, the crisp Ohio air sharp on my face, a stack of folders tucked under my arm. As I stepped through the gate, the smell of grilled burgers and charcoal hung in the air, mingling with the faint scent of cut grass. Neighbors glanced up from folding chairs and picnic tables, murmurs passing through the crowd as they recognized me. "Well, look who decided to join us," Tyler said, grinning with arrogance. "Here to lecture us again?" I held the folders, calmly. "No lectures today, just a reminder of reality." Lisa laughed nervously, sensing my calm but not understanding what was coming. "Reality? What are you talking about?" I lifted the top folder and flipped it open, revealing the deed to the house, along with tax notices and bank statements. My voice cut through the laughter and music like a blade. This house, this property, and all associated accounts remain legally under my name, I said, holding the documents high. "You've been living in it, spending it, and laughing at me, believing I had no power. But here's the truth. Every mortgage, every tax payment, every investment you've been neglecting, all of it is still under my authority." A hush fell over the crowd. Tyler's grin faltered, and Lisa's smirk disappeared entirely. "This can't be true," he stammered. "Rachel, tell them—" Rachel froze, her friends whispering behind her. She avoided my eyes, her jaw tight with shame.